Hi, David Odell here with Odell Complete Concrete. This is the first day for me on this job site. This is another one of my brothers, a different brother from the last video that we watched on the foundation pour. And this one is in Tustin, California. This ground is very expansive, so it's at the most saturated point, which is good for expansive soil because that's how you want it. You want it as wet as possible when you pour on it. That way it won't come up anymore as it rains. It'll shrink rather than expand. So we didn't start pouring here till about 12:30. We also poured a little bit in the house, about a 2-inch overlay, because the whole house foundation is shifting. So we tore out some flooring, did about a 2-inch lift to try to level the floor out. And this particular mix design that he's using here is a 2500 PSI pea gravel mix. Now as we pour this out, because there's no dobies under the rebar, we're just lifting it on the way out. We're going to be wet tooling the joints in here today, so we won't have to come back to saw cut it. And we ran out of concrete, so that's the first load. With the stuff that was inside the house and this outside, we came up a yard short. This driveway was running a good 5 inches thick, so that's why we didn't make it. Now the second load will just tailgate because it's just right off the sidewalk there, and he's only carrying a yard, so he's light. So that's the 4-foot magnesium bull float. Also we're using a 12-inch wide, 1/2 inch radius joiner, or actually edger. Now we've already snapped out dry line, snapped the concrete where we're going to cut the joints. And that's a 2-inch cutter, it goes 2 inches deep. And it's about 3 feet long, so it runs fairly straight. And the nice thing about it is when you cut that deep, you're actually separating the aggregate. So even if you go back on here with, say, a 1/4 inch deep, 1/2 inch, 3/4 deep, whatever it might be, it's going to most likely crack there because you've already separated the aggregate down low, all the way down to the rebar. So what we end up with here is 8 squares in this driveway. Now the joiner that he's using here is, they call it an Arizona joiner. I have no idea why that is. Maybe it was founded or it's real popular in Arizona. And basically what that is, and the difference from the joiner that I use, it's a lot wider gap. But it's a lot easier to run because it runs in that crack a lot easier because it's so wide than a narrow joiner. Much easier to keep straight. So we're getting a lot of bleed water out of this because one, the soil was really wet, and it's late in the day when we have no sun. So my brother had already did the driveway, the garage floor. He did that, the side yard. That was a different pour. This is the last pour on this particular site. Now here's Big Blue on a rocker arm. I'm going to run this tool just in each individual square. That way I don't go over the joints. Because if I do that, I might lose them. And then be hard to get them back in nice and straight again. Here comes the funny trowel. Looks like one funny trowel on each side. Well, he's going through the joiners, the joints again on that side. And I'm just hitting it with the funny on this end. So we're getting a little more sun on this side so I can start whipping it out. That joiner didn't quite go down all the way on that end, so I just give it a couple stomps. And that did the trick. Now we're going over it by hand. Normally when you see us out there on the knee boards, that's usually going to be our final pass. And then it's just a matter of brooming it, which you see me doing it here, which was very difficult with that RV behind me. And I wanted to pull it one way. I could have hooked up a bunch of poles and ran it all the way across, but then I couldn't wait on these last two sections, which were much wetter, so I had to do the sections as they dried out. Right, it looks fairly light outside right now, but that's just the camera bringing in the light. It's actually quite dark right now. It's about 5 o'clock, so it's not that bright out right now. That particular broom's 50% horsehair and 50% nylon. And I'm just one way in the broom because, it's a little wet. And I didn't want to run it both directions. We were trying to keep like a medium broom finish on here, not a real rough one. But also we got to get it done before it gets dark. On our final square down here at the bottom on that cleanup load, that 1 yard cleanup, that was the one we really had to wait on a little bit. We actually had to break out the flashlights. I don't really show the interior overlay we did, but we had to, we ended up having to turn the heater on full blast in the house to get that stuff to dry out. Well, here we are wrapping it up, and it's getting dark right now. It's about 5:30. What time do you think it is? About 5:30? Whatever time it is, it's getting dark right now, and We're just waiting on this last section to broom it. From the looks of this camera, it's really pulling in the light, so it's looking daylight really through this, which is nice. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a nice day.